Greetings, actors and writer strike supporters, and welcome back to Tune Out. This will be a podcast we do instead of stay doomed to support those striking. I am your host, as always, TV's Noah Houlihan, joined by Laura Prince.
Hi.
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 So today on Tuned Out, our wonderful patrons have asked us to discuss stand-up comedy. We have quite the relationship with stand-up comedy, in that I've been a stand-up comedian for over a decade, and we've toured this great nation doing said stand-up comedy. We don't talk about it much on this show.
No.
So now we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One-word answers.
Laura will be asleep for this podcast, and I'll be carrying this because she's very sleepy and only giving one-word answers.
No, it's just, this is kind of mostly your thing, because why I got into comedy is a one-word answer. Spite.
Spite! I mean, I think that's a very fun story. But let me ask you this. What was your relationship with stand-up comedy before you got into it? Like, did you watch stand-up? Did you enjoy stand-up? Is there a stand-up comedian you really enjoyed?
I watched like Comedy Central Presents when it was on, but didn't actively seek it out. I really liked Stephen Lynch, who...
Oh, yeah.
If you have not heard Stephen Lynch, a lot of his material has aged very, very poorly.
Quite.
He was a musical comedian, like a more simplistic Bo Burnham.
Yes. I was a big...
Like early Bo Burnham, before he got like...
Yeah. Back when he was writing like the Clan Cookout and the Anne Frank song. That version of Bo Burnham.
Yes.
So I actually remember when I was in high school, loved stand-up comedy. Friday night stand-up every Friday. It was like 6 hours of stand-up, and I would just watch it. And they would do a competition where you could vote for your favorite comedian.
Okay. And
they would do like a top 10. And I was on Stephen Lynch's like email list.
Oh.
And I got an email from him asking for votes because he really wanted to beat Dane Cook. What Stephen Lynch didn't know is I was friends with Dane Cook on AIM, and I told on him.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I was like, look what Stephen Lynch sent me, and I sent him the email, and Dane Cook replied, lol, and then we never spoke again.
All right. I also remember really liking Mitch Hedberg.
Mitch is so good.
Because I always liked very witty humor. Mm-hmm. And I found Mitch Hedberg to be very, very witty.
Yes.
I still think of him anytime I am near an escalator.
That is broken?
No, just temporarily stairs.
Temporary stairs. Oh, man. Mitch Hedberg used to be funny.
Still is. But he also used to be.
I've always been like attracted to the one-line comedians, even though that's not a style of comedy I'm very good at.
Right. I remember you used to do one-liners.
Really?
Yes. You had a notebook and you would try to do one-liners.
Yeah, it was a weird experiment that I did that like, I was never a one-liner comedian, but I wrote a bunch. And what I eventually ended up using that notebook for was like punishment. Where I was like, if I wasn't getting the reactions that I wanted to, I would like, I'm pulling out the notebook and I'm doing notebook jokes if you guys don't get on board.
You know what really works on an audience, guys? Punishment.
It worked great. I knew what I was doing. I'm a good comedian. But yeah, one-liner comics like Dimitri Martin, Stephen Wright, those were guys that I was super into. But I could tell you the first time I ever had any sort of relationship with stand-up comedy is when I was a very little boy.
Okay.
I remember going to see what my parents were watching in the living room after my bedtime. And when I got there, my mom was like, you absolutely cannot watch this. It's rated X. And I was like, oh, well, if it's not rated R, I can watch it. They're like, no, X is worse than R. And this is the first time I'd ever heard of X, and that's how I learned of the X rating. And I was like, oh, okay. And then when I turned to leave, I looked at the screen, and I was like, I'm going to remember this, and one day I'm going to find this, I'm going to watch it. And I remember I was just going through all the VHS tapes in my home, because I had VHS tapes. And we had this like big like box full of just blank or, recordable VHS.
Oh, everybody. That was a hallmark of that time period.
And there was this time where I was just like, I'm going to go see what's in like the bottom of this and see what's on them. And I found it and I put it in. I was like, oh my God, this is the thing my parents were watching that night. And it was Dennis Leary's No Cure for Cancer.
Which is definitely appropriate for children.
I remember...
Isn't the song Asshole on that special?
That opens the special.
I couldn't remember if it opened or closed.
It in fact opens the special. And I watched it. I think I watched it until I wore it out. I loved it so much. And it was very interesting in that there were a lot of jokes that I did not understand. To be honest, still don't understand.
Okay.
What are lewds?
Quaaludes?
Oh, quaaludes. Oh, okay. That makes a little bit more sense. But he's like, let's get some lewds. I was like, I don't know what lewds are, but yeah, let's get them.
No, not for you.
And like, I didn't know what a bong was at the time. And the big joke that I always remembered is how much he liked NyQuil because it had that big F and Q on it. And that was just like, that was something I understood. I knew what NyQuil was. But I didn't know what like an 8-ball was or any of this other stuff. But I just kept watching it because I loved the fact that there was this guy on stage alone and everybody liked him. And I was like, that's a thing I want to do.
Aww.
And apparently when I was very young, I would just like... I'd always want to tell jokes, but I didn't know jokes because I was a child. So I would just like tell long stories. And then they would end with, and at the end. And then everybody would laugh because you placate children.
Yes. Even if they're not that funny. You're like, you're the funniest. Yeah. No one's ever been funnier than you, babe.
But my first time doing stand-up, I was in 3rd grade. And I did it for the talent show.
Oh.
Yeah. God, I love to stand up. And they were all jokes. They were almost all jokes that I had stolen. Because I was in 3rd grade. And I did a joke about the movie Aliens, which I had not seen. Because I was a child. But I remember my joke was like, I just saw that movie Aliens. It was a great movie. Except for that part where they went to sleep for 17 years. If that was me, I'd hit the alarm clock and say, just 6 more months, please.
Aww.
And then I rapped at the end.
Oh, boy.
It ended with, I like The Wizard of Oz, but I wonder what if it was made in the 90s. And then I sang, somewhere over the rainbow, kick it. Oh, God, I almost remember the rap. There's a girl named Dorothy and her dog Toto. She had a problem with the witch with the ugly nose.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God. My girl Dorothy, she wasn't slow. She melted that witch with H2O.
Did you make that up yourself?
I remember like writing it with my mom.
Cause it's like that's very good.
My girl, my girl Dorothy, she was fly. She clicked her heels and she waved bye bye, bye bye, and that was my ending.
That's very, very cute.
Thank you. And then. Kind of like a stand-up comedian, I kind of toured that set around. And like any place with a stage, I was like, hey, can I do 5 minutes of stand-up? So I remember going to like a dance and doing it. Mm-hmm. And my uncle had a band. And they had like a Woodstock parody that they would do. This
Okay.
big, like, concert. And I was like, can I do stand-up? And they're like, sure. So, like, there's this, like, festival that there has to be video of it. Of me doing this, like, 5-minute set.
Oh, that's so weird.
Right? So the next year, they were like, you doing stand-up again? And I was like, of course I want to do stand-up again. And I hadn't stolen any new material, so what was I going to do? So my mom pushed this, like, set that I was doing where I had these big cue cards that had, like, Phillyisms spelled out.
Okay.
And I just remember it was Jeet, did you eat?
Yeah.
I, all right, and Sco, let's go. And I would just be like, here it is in a sentence. Jeet, I, Sco. And I had this issue with the set in that I didn't like it, so I didn't want to perform it.
Right.
And also, everyone had already seen it in rehearsal for the talent show. So people were already, like, walking up to me going, Jeet, Jeet. And I was like, oh, I hate this. And then I remember my principal coming up to me. And she was like, ask me, ask me. I was like, all right, Jeet? And she went, no, Jew? No, did you?
I get it.
Okay.
I thought there was more to the story, so
I was just making sure you got it.
I understood.
And I was like, oh my God, I'll add that to the act. And my mom was like, I don't think you should say Jew, because it could be offensive to Jews. I went to Catholic school. There were no Jews there.
I also don't, like, think people would see it that way.
Could you imagine if this fourth grader got canceled in the 90s for saying the word Jew? A thing that people said in Philly all the time. So I really didn't like the set. So the day of the talent show, I pretended I was sick so I didn't have to go.
Stop!
Yeah.
Because you didn't want to do the jokes your mom wrote for you?
I didn't like them. And I just, like, they were funny. And, like, there's an entire YouTuber that just does that bit now.
Does your mom listen to this? Because you're going to be in so much trouble.
No, she doesn't. My mom does not listen to this. I mean, in retrospect, they were great jokes, and maybe they, it wouldn't have been the worst thing if I had another tight 5. But I didn't want to do it, and on top of that, I was in another, like, act.
So you let someone else down?
I let down the entire fourth grade boys because we were doing a dance to. There she was, just a walking down the street, singing, do-a-diddy-diddy, dum-diddy-do. Yeah, that was the thing I was going to do in the talent show. Talent shows are miserable.
Yeah, they really are. I didn't know how to acquire instrumental accompaniment.
Okay.
So until high school, I did talent shows a cappella because background music was witchcraft to me.
Yeah.
I was never a kid who wanted to ask her parents for stuff. So it wasn't because they wouldn't do it. Like, it wasn't because my parents were like, would not have helped me. It was, I wanted to, it was my stupid talent show. I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And you know what? This dovetails into the first time I realized I was funny.
Okay.
A friend of mine in the, I don't know, maybe 3rd grade talent show, 2 of my friends did If I Only Had a Brain as Dorothy and the Scarecrow. Back to Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz, so big in the 90s, guys.
Yeah, so huge.
And I was like, I want to do something too. And they were like, well, we're already Dorothy and the Scarecrow. You can be Toto. Retroactively, I was being bullied. Mm-hmm. At the time.
Yeah.
I drew on some dog whiskers. And I got on stage and really just ruined it for everyone else. At the end of every line, I'd go, bark, bark. And the audience loved it.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the first time I realized that there was a good chance that I was funny. Mm-hmm. And also, that's ridiculous.
I mean, maybe we should just talk about comedy in general, because you are a great improver.
Yes, and that was also an accident.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this story, so I want to set you up with it.
So, a good friend of mine wanted to try out for an improv team, but he didn't want to go by himself. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have plans. I had never done improv before in my life. I'd been an actor for a long time, but I'd never done improv before in my entire life. But I'd seen a lot of Whose Line Is It Anyway, which I did enjoy growing up. Mm-hmm. And so I went with my friend, and we did an entire day of auditions and callbacks and what have you. And at the end of the night, one of us got an email saying they'd been accepted into the troupe. And it was not my friend. And so, because my friend didn't want to go to something alone, now I had a new hobby.
You had responsibilities to a new group.
So that's how I got into improv, which I really enjoyed doing. I don't do it so much anymore. I do it sort of sparingly at, wherever they'll book me.
Right.
But I don't really work with a team anymore. So it's very much like, whatever ends up happening.
I also wanted you to share the story of when you went to the improv show and discovered you were funny.
When I went to the improv show and just... Oh, is this the...
During Challenge?
So, this was maybe about a month before our previous story. I'm with my friends, and we all went to go see an improv show. Because there was just happened to be one, and that's what my friends and I were doing. And they played a game called Challenge, which you pretend to be an expert on something or someone, and then once you've said something that's just like a little bit too BS, another improviser will go, challenge, and say something kind of funny that undermines you. Yeah. And the subject was skydiving. And someone went, parachutes are always bright colors to catch people's eye in case you fall and get lost. And I turned to my friend and went, Black Power Ranger's parachute was black. And then the next thing was challenge. The Black Power Ranger's parachute was black. And I was like, is this a thing I can do? Is this a skill?
Is this a skill, she said while pointing at a butterfly?
Is this a skill?
Is this a skill?
And it turned out it was. I was a very good straight man.
Yeah?
Yeah, I did not tend to be I was never the funniest person in a scene, but I was good at the scene skills, and I could occasionally slip in something very funny. But mostly I was just very, straight man.
That makes sense.
And still am in a lot of situations that I get involved in.
So when it comes to the first time actually performing, and you can talk about stand-up or improv, I would say my first time, because I didn't do any stand-up in high school.
Right.
And I remember a friend of mine, Kevin Hurley, who's a comedian in New York right now, asked me at a party, over the summer, you said you wanted to be a stand-up comedian, right? I was like, yeah. It's like, well, why aren't you? And I was like, I should probably start doing it. So when I got to college, I signed up for, a competition. And
did you know?
I signed up for a competition, and it was the Catch a Rising Star competition.
Did you now?
Yeah, and I made it to the finals.
Did you now?
And I did, and I was doing this bit for a while, and it's a bit I still think about, where I had a cup from Target. And I always just carried it with me on stage and drank out of it. And then in the middle of my act, I was like, do you guys like my Target cup? I drink out of it because I think it would be funny if I became really important. Really important. I become, Messiah. Wouldn't it be funny if this is the cup Indiana Jones was after? Little did I know that people knew me as Target Cup Guy because of that. And I ended up losing that competition to Laura's friend, who she prevented from joining the improv team. So if you had just let him be an improver, maybe he wouldn't have dipped his toe in my water and I would have won that competition.
Sorry. My bad. Yeah, when's the first time you did improv?
The first time I did improv was probably, I went to a vocational school in high school. So I went to an acting school. So I would probably say that the first time I ever actually did improv was auditioning for that school.
Okay.
And I had prepared, like, you had to prepare a monologue, but while you were waiting, like, you were with a bunch of other kids, instead of just having a normal, like, stressed out audition room, you did improv. And I was, like, really excited for this idea, and, like, I'd never done it before, and I was like, I couldn't wait for my turn, and we did first line, last line?
That was actually the first improv game I ever played.
Where they give you a line to start the scene.
And the line that ends it.
And you just have to figure that out. How do you get from there to there? And I was so excited, and I couldn't wait to do it. And the one girl who was running it went, oh, by the way, it doesn't have to be funny all the time. And I was, like, so excited to be funny. And I was, like, so upset that she put that energy out into the world. That I was just like, oh, no, we're going to end up doing a serious scene. And she read that on my face that I was upset. Mm-hmm. And she was like, no. Let's make that the first line. Things don't have to be funny all the time.
Okay.
And your end line is squid.
All right.
I was like, okay. So I ended up doing a scene with this girl, Kat, who also ended up going to the school. And she's just freaking out, like, why does everything doesn't have to be funny all the time. Nothing has to be funny. Some things can be serious. So I just came on and was a clown. And I was like, hi, do you want a balloon animal? And I was just making these invisible balloon animals over and over again. A goose. And the girl running the audition, like, came in and was like, it's Noah's turn. So she, like, grabbed me, and I just pretended she was choking me, and, like, my dying words were So that's the first time I remember doing improv. We really studied improv freshman year, and I won Best Improviser. Blows on knuckles.
I mean, I never won Best Improviser.
Well, you didn't go to a school that had awards.
No. No, the thing is I did, just not for that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I did improv for years and then picked up doing it again after school. Mm-hmm. When I'll do it at cons from time to time now. I do miss it because it's a skill I always forget I have.
Me too.
I always forget that I'm a good improviser until I'm kind of just thrown in.
Yeah.
Because I remember at MagFest, I did worked with These Guys Are Sick for a few years. And I really hope we can all come back to MagFest one day as a group because I did love working with them.
Oh, absolutely.
And I left the room for Party Quirks. I hate Party Quirks. Party Quirks used to be punitive in the troupe I was doing. Like, if you went to the bathroom, there was a non-zero chance you were coming back, finding out you were throwing a party.
Right.
But I knew I was doing it, and so I was like, oh, I hate Party Quirks. So I decided to go for my my little girl. Every improviser has, like, that fallback.
Yeah.
And mine's a little girl. Mm-hmm. Because I'm perky and blonde, and that's low-hanging fruit for me. So I came in and I was like, hi, everybody, welcome to my princess party. Not realizing that they'd already announced it was a princess party.
Yeah, like while she was out of the room.
So it ended up dovetailing in really nicely. Mm-hmm. And playing a little kid's fun, because you can always do, like, a good joke about people swearing, a good joke about people not knowing what someone else says means. So it's a very good, like, crutch. But I remember, like, being like, oh yeah, I forgot I was good at this.
Yeah. Improv is just, it's so fun.
It's so much fun.
I gotta tell my disaster story, because it's something that lives on my chest.
Okay.
When it comes to improv. And it was a show that you ran at Too Many Games.
Yes.
And we did, the words I'm about to say are so ridiculous to me. We did film and theater styles.
Yeah.
And we had to do a scene where we were siblings fighting. And my scene partner was the nostalgia critic, Doug Walker.
Yes.
And Doug Walker immediately made us Bowser Jr. and one of the Koopa kids, which I thought was a real funny idea. So we're just kind of like bickering, and Laura would ring a bell and then announce the new theater style. Oh, it's an action movie now. Or, now it's a first-person shooter.
And in games like this, you're essentially a third person in the scene. Mm-hmm. Because you're not just reading down a list. You're kind of assigning based on what you think would be very funny.
So, Laura rings the bell and announces that the scene is now a hip-hop musical in the style of Hamilton.
Because I'm evil.
And I turned and looked at you and gave you the dirtiest look, like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. Because I had not seen Hamilton at the time. I just knew it as that thing that Laura sang sometimes.
Yeah.
And I gave you that look, and when I turned back around, Doug Walker was just rapping in my face.
Yes.
And, like, it was so incredible that I was just stunned. And then, Pro Jared jumps into the scene and just starts beatboxing with him. So they're just performing this unbelievable rap song in my face. And I kind of, like, stumble. And then, like, the only thing I can think of is the king doing, like, the da-da-da-da.
Yes.
Da. So I try to start doing that, but to Doug, it just looks like I'm floundering. So he just starts a new verse and just starts rapping in my face, and I'm just stunned and amazed and horrified at my situation.
I feel kind of bad about this.
And then luckily Laura rang the bell so that was over. But then after the show, like, you would think, like, oh, I want to forget about this. Wouldn't it be horrible if someone ran up and, like, showed me a video of it or had taken a picture of this horrible moment? A fan ran up to me after the show and had drawn a picture of it. There was an artist interpretation of me freezing on stage while the nostalgia critic yelled in verse in my face. And I wake up every day knowing that occurred.
Oh.
Love you, Doug. Let's get back to stand-up, because stand-up was a thing I was good at.
I don't remember the first time I did stand-up.
Oh, really? I do pretty well. Because
it was a big you had a big show. It was like, it was an open mic, but it was special for some reason.
There was an open mic that I had this, like, chip on my shoulder that this open mic could be good, because when you're starting at stand-up, you think open mics are important when they're not. And I was like, let me run this open mic. And I tried to book it to make it important.
Yeah.
So, like, I brought down Uncle Yo to do comedy, and also another New York comedian named TJ Del Reno.
Yeah.
Who's a voice on Pokemon. And also, they were filming a documentary on Steve Carino and his son. Steve Carino, who is currently the head of the WWE Performance Center. And Colby Carino, who
was very, very young at the time.
Very young at the time. He's currently a champion somewhere. But they used to do stand-up comedy with me. And since it was so big and like all this stuff was going on, Laura was going to make her debut. And the only thing I like that really clearly I remember is you had some sort of joke about Toy Story.
I never performed that joke. I wrote it, and another comedian had written a very, very similar
joke.
And did it that night for the first time, and I went, oh no!
I tried to encourage you to it's fine, you can still do it, and you were like, no, I don't think I can. And then you went outside and you called your friend that beat me at Catch a Rising Star, and then came back in, was like, he gave me what I needed to hear, and then you went on stage and killed, and I was like, ah! But I remember you doing very well that night.
It's just really fun. I'm gonna go call my friend. You and I had not been working together all that long.
No, I mean, you were coming to open mics as an audience member for a bit.
Yes.
And you had no interest in being a stand-up comedian.
I also had very little interest in watching open mics.
Yeah.
I have a lot of Beanie Babies from that era because there was a crane machine in the arcade in the bowling alley.
Yeah. We were an unwanted distraction to Laura gaining Beanie Babies.
One of those Beanie Babies is still in my car to this day. The duck Beanie Baby that's in my car.
Yes. But then, I mean, you got to tell the story. What made you decide you were going to do comedy? Spite!
When you go to an open mic, and when you go to an open mic in that era, it was a lot of slightly misogynist humor. And I got it in my head that I was funnier than some. Not all. There were people there who were and are way funnier than I will ever be. Mm-hmm. But I was better than some of those people.
Yeah.
I was like, I could do comedy better than some of these people. Mm-hmm. And I did.
You certainly did.
It's anything that I have succeeded in my life has been spite related. Spite.
Yeah, for me, the reason I really like stand-up comedy is it's very much everything on your own shoulders. And I kind of like that feeling of, like, back against the wall, like, doing your best to get out of a bad situation. I love doing bad shows.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
But to me, there is something great about, like, being in a situation where it's not conducive to comedy and then coming out the other side having done a great show. One of my favorite shows of all time, and I'm sorry I keep doing this, one of the reasons it's so great was your friend who beat me in that stand-up competition was there in the audience that night and refused to go on.
Yes, that'll happen.
So I did this in front of him, which was great. But I was at a show at a bar that doesn't exist anymore called Champs. And I was very excited to perform. And the host did this weird thing where, well, first off, there was no microphone. The microphone was broken.
Yeah, and that's always bad with stand-up because you want a microphone.
Because there's a saying that's about comics where it's like, as long as there's a stage and a mic will be there. There was no stage and there was no mic. And the host came on and did this thing where he told a joke, and like there was a good number of people there. There's probably like 20, 25 people there.
Right.
Half the room didn't get it.
Oof.
So he told those people that they could screw off and just focused on half the room.
Right.
Then on his next joke, half of those people didn't like it. So he told more tables to screw off. And then he just whittled it down to only one person liked him. And then he insulted that person. And now no one liked him. And then it was time to start the show.
Oh.
So the first comic that goes on, he was, I'll say his name. He was the Great Mutal. And he is an alternative comic.
Yeah.
He likes to do very strange things. And at the previous show, he had cut his own hair and ate it. And he got in trouble for that. So he had just gotten yelled at about his comedy style before coming to the stage.
Oh, good.
And he simply walked on stage and said, I've been informed that I cannot do the style of comedy that I enjoy doing. So I'm going to do something a little different.
Oh, boy.
What's the punchline to the saddest joke ever written? And then he walked off stage. Which, part of me thinks that was awesome. But the other part of me is like, this is yet to be a comedy show. Then they called the next person to the stage. He had left to go try to buy a microphone. Then it was me.
Yay!
And I opened with, so the first comic made you hate him, the second comic told one joke, and the third comic's not here, and he's been the best one so far. And I was just, like, I hit my zone. I remember there was, like, a fireplace behind me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, why is no one using the stage? And I, like, stepped up onto it. And I was just, like, leaning up against, like, the hearth of this, drinking a rum and coke, doing comedy with no microphone, and just kill it. And I remember yelling to the host, like, how much time do I have left? And they were like, we're trying to get the mic fixed. And I was like, all right, I'll keep going. And I did like 20 minutes with no mic and just ripped the room apart in front of your friend that beat me at Catch a Rising Star. And I was like, I am the best comic alive.
Man,
this is a redemption arc. No, this just makes me sad and petty.
yeah, I'm like, man, he probably doesn't think about this that often.
Yeah, I don't think about you at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I never really had like a competitive thing with another comic.
No.
No.
No rivalries or anything like that.
No.
Do you have like a favorite show?
I'm trying to think of what my I bombed at a casino once. That was fun. But it was like a cool big deal that I got to perform there.
The one that you were like behind the bar?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was a weird one. I got bumped from that show, so at least you got to perform.
But it was also like not my crowd. I hadn't learned, and I honestly never really did learn to write outside of my core audience.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, who wants to hear my jokes about Pokemon? Gentle listener, they did not want to hear my jokes about Pokemon.
They did not.
I love that it's like, what was your favorite show? Hey, this time I bombed real bad.
I mean, those are like always memorable, like the train wrecks and stuff.
I mean, I've had a number of con shows that I've not been the happiest with because anytime you schedule morning stand-up, don't.
Morning stand-up.
Morning stand-up is the worst feeling on the planet. I love the Q&A that Plus Two Comedy will do after their shows. That's usually my favorite part because it's improv.
Yeah, because it's improv.
I think my favorite show was actually this last year at Too Many Games. I'm going to fully admit I did not feel prepared for this show. Mm-hmm. We offered to give Colt Cabana my time.
Yes, we did. Because he didn't show up.
I felt so unprepared for this show that I would have looked at him like a savior.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm probably only going to do like 10 minutes. And I went 20. Mm-hmm. I did like my full time.
Yep.
I was like, oh.
You always do.
Yeah, I forget that I work better in smaller places like Too Many Games because I do play off the people in the audience a great deal.
Yeah, like, we're so used to, the bad con room.
Yeah.
Where, like, half the stage is a table and, like, it's just fluorescence, that it's almost uncomfortable when they give us an actual stage. Like, how am I supposed to run through the crowd here?
Yeah, I know that's a fairly recent show, and it's not recency bias of like, my last show was my favorite show. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed that particular show.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed feeling, there were a couple people in the crowd who probably listened to this podcast who kind of like played off and made jokes about other projects I work on, and kind of like, so there was that like rapport in that relationship, which was a lot of fun. I'm trying to think, like, what are my other favorite shows?
Well, I do want to bring up like a very interesting point that we have to deal with, is that in the world of stand-up comedy, we are very small.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember...
I am no one.
Like, there was a time where if you searched nerd stand-up comedian, the +2 comedy logo was like the 24th picture. And like that was like my ranking of how it worked in my brain. But despite the fact that like we're not on the top 1,000 stand-up comedians out there, we have a fan base that is very dedicated to us. So we have this weird dual thing of like, we are so hungry to try to get more exposure and get like people out there and gain new fans, but also knowing we have to cater to a fan base that's already seen our sets.
Yes.
Which is such a weird thing where it's like, we are not at the level of notoriety where I should have to throw out a half hour of comedy in a year, but here we are doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we live very unique lives in terms of stand-up.
Yeah, I don't... You do consistently other shows. I don't really. Mm-hmm. I don't like to play outside of my playgrounds.
Yeah, which I understand that.
There's also this element of... I like to write about what I'm interested in, and what I'm interested in has been increasingly bizarre and archaic. Mm-hmm. And esoteric, and I'm gonna have a group of people who are with me as I make jokes about Pokemon. Mm-hmm. I keep using Pokemon as an example because it's kind of evergreen. I think my first set had jokes about Pokemon, and my last set has had jokes.
I'm pretty sure I could do a half hour of just Pokemon jokes at this point in my life.
It was something a friend said about you that I think of all the time. He died as he lived, making Pokemon jokes.
Yeah, I'll still do the open mic thing. And like before a convention, I'll go like run some new jokes at an open mic. And I'll open with, I have a convention. Feel free to tune out for the next 5 minutes, because I just need to practice saying this out loud. So, Death Note. It's interesting, like in my time as a comedian, like I kind of get the feeling for what different rooms are. Like I've done hipster rooms, and I've done upper class rooms, and I've done black rooms, and black rooms love Dragon Ball Z.
All right.
So usually I could slip a few of those in and like, all right.
It's so interesting doing comedy. I never feel like I'm a great comedian. It's mostly because I am... we write very, very differently, you and I. You tend to write down to the word. To the point where I, at one point, was able to pantomime entire jokes you did.
Yes, it was very hurtful.
I was able to... essentially drunk history style pantomime and lip sync entire jokes.
I was at an open mic, and there were a total of 7 people there, and 5 of them were watching Laura, the 6th person, do my act, while 1 person was nice enough to keep eye contact with me. And Laura was killing in the back of this room.
In my defense, it was 5 people who already knew your jokes. So...
Not in that order. That was a new order for those jokes.
Oh, God. So, sorry. I tend to write off... I tend to shoot it from the hip a little more than I should. To the point where I'm like, I've got to start filming my sets, because I know there was some really good stuff I did at Too Many Games that we will never see again, guys.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff I've lost in those moments as well.
Yeah, but it wasn't like your whole set.
Well, yeah.
It's usually like good 60% of my set is something because I went on a tangent at Too Many Games that was genuinely very funny that I don't even remember the topic of. But somebody did something and I
filmed.
Yeah, somebody did something and I played off it and just went. And that's what I'm good at. So it's just, yeah.
Those like weird moments, those like fleeting moments. There's a bit that I've done only once that's one of my favorite things I've ever done. Because I was upset. It was another Too Many Games. And they put us up against the burlesque show. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
So like there was a burlesque show next door. And we're performing stand-up comedy. We still like had a decent crowd.
We did.
But I decided, like, anytime to, like, compete with the burlesque show, anytime I got a big applause break, I would strip a little bit. And I'm, like, I'm not wearing anything sexy. I'm wearing, like, a Super Mario Brothers t-shirt, like, jeans and sneakers.
Because you cannot do comedy in shorts if you're
Don't do comedy in shorts. Comedy pants, important. So I'm doing my bits. I'm getting some big laughs.
Life hack: just wear a dress.
I take my shoe off. I take off a shoe. I do some more jokes and like more laughs. I take a belt off and stuff like that. Then I get some more laughs and I take off my shirt to reveal an identically styled duck hunt shirt underneath and no sell it. And just continue to do comedy, and everyone's like lost and confused in laughter. It was such like a weird moment because like it was a distracting joke. So then afterwards I had to like wait, we got to come back to what I was talking about. Ignore the bit I had planned for like at the beginning of the set that didn't pay off until like minute 12 or 13 of the set. So that's a bit that I think about all the time that I know I'll never do again because I don't know what I did that shirt.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, I genuinely love writing from stage. And it's a filthy habit because I don't get on stage as much as I should to do that crap.
Yeah.
But it's just the style that works for me.
You're a chef and I'm a baker?
Yes.
Because I love the science of stand-up comedy, like down to like the word choice and like emphasis of words and how like rhythm and pattern works and all that stuff. Love it. It annoys comics when I talk about it.
And I dump half a cup of garlic powder in it.
Yeah. Yeah. They like garlic.
It's artist and technician. And that makes me feel really pretentious to say artist versus technician, but like that's kind of the vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it's true, and it's a different type of style. We both achieve the same goal. We just get there in a different way. And I mean, that's part of comedy is like there's no one correct way to do stand-up comedy, which is why I love it so much. Is that like, you know, one of my exercises is writing comedy as someone else, because like, all right, so they would probably do this and stuff like that. Again, me being weird and a technician. But like the point I'm making is that everyone does it a little differently.
Yeah, I kind of just do you want to talk about the time you chose a different writing partner?
No. I'd really rather not talk about this at all. So, but I will because you brought it up.
We were doing it was a 5-minute set contest. I'm going to take out a lot of the like rules of the particular game.
Okay, but I just want to point out, it's a game I invented. Like, I came up with the rules to this.
Yeah, I would have let that one go if I were you.
I know, I'm mad.
And you were up against my friend who beat you in a bunch of competitions. Mm-hmm. And everyone got to choose a writing assistant, because you had to write an entire set in a night. And you do it at the end of the night, and everyone got to choose one assistant.
Yes.
And you didn't choose me.
I thought
you made it a point not to choose me.
Because I was afraid it would look like nepotism. Because when you win this competition, it earns a booking for your assistant comic. So I was afraid that if I picked you, it looked like, oh, Noah's just trying to get Laura booked. So I was like, I'm not going to pick you, and I was going to pick someone else, and I picked the wrong person. And
my friend picked me.
Mm-hmm.
And the topic that we were writing on was like a current events topic.
Yes.
And
it was the Ukraine war.
Like no, it was the Olympics in Sochi.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
I thought it was Ukraine.
It was well before that.
I know, that's why I was like, was that the same conflict?
No, it was the Olympics in Sochi. Mm-hmm. And my friend and I both knew for a fact the other one follows current events pretty closely.
I spent most of my time Googling things that were happening because I had no idea what was going on.
The night started with me going, I read the news, and my friend going, I listen to NPR, and we high-fived, and I watched The Regret.
So then, not only did Laura's friend perform 5 minutes of great comedy, but a chunk of it was about me and how I didn't know anything. And then I had to perform afterwards. And I don't remember a single joke I told other than Vladimir Poopin. And I don't remember the context.
It was because in the Sochi Olympics, it was the weird, double toilets.
So I said Vladimir Poopin. And then at one point, because, I had to do 5 minutes, I sat down on stage and just, breathed. Just... and I lost. Yeah. And they gave him the trophy, and he leaned over and said, "You weren't that funny that night at Champs."
No one did that.
He did that.
No, he didn't. He did not.
Mm-hmm. And then he spit in my eye and kicked me in the nose.
None of that happened. Noah's really still carrying some baggage, guys.
I mean, you have to be a heavily damaged person to do comedy or really good at writing on stage. Those are the two ways to do this. I want to tell the quick story of the Great Plus 2 comedy scam.
Okay.
Because this was before you were in the group. Plus 2 Comedy had a show in Chicago at C2E2. We did a show that was in the dealer's room. So there were tables set up, but it was the entire convention center. And I remember the booth that was directly in front of us was the guy who played Mr. Delivery on Mr. Rogers.
Okay.
I was like, Mr. Delivery's here. We did the show. It went about as good as it could for the circumstances. It was also morning comedy. I think it was maybe an 11 a.m. show.
Yes.
And we were okay with how things went, but we were annoyed. And then we found out later that Earthquake and what's his name? Steve Ranazizi from the League. He also lied about 9/11.
Yeah, that one.
Were performing on the main stage at 8 o'clock. And I was we're going and we're performing. And
so you were sneaking onto a show?
No, I think what we do is we just walk in and we're the comedians. Where do we go? So we walk in and we're hey, we're Plus 2 Comedy, we're here to perform. And they're who? It's Plus 2 Comedy. And We pointed to our names in like a book.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you booked on this? And then we very just stuck to the story of, we were told we were. We didn't give any names or anything like that. But anytime they were like, are you on this show? We responded, we were told we were. So this way we kind of, instead of coming off as like, yeah, jerk, we were like, we were told we were supposed to be here. We want to do right by you in the convention.
Oh my God. Grifters.
So we were just like hanging out. They're like making phone calls and all this other stuff. And eventually this guy walked up to us and said, listen, I'm really sorry, but something got messed up and you're not performing. And we're like, what? We flew all the way out here from New Jersey. When you're not going to be on the show. And he went, New Jersey? Oh, we'll book you at Comic-Con New York. And we shook hands and we switched email addresses and we walked out with a booking.
Oh my God.
And that's how we got Comic-Con New York. Griff, 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 griff.
We tried.
Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah, I feel very, feel like a bad craftsperson of how little I have to say about the craft. Because so much of it for me will be funny.
Yeah.
Can you just be funny? Mm-hmm. Have you considered being funny?
Yeah.
And I honestly never think I'm that good. I've had good shows, but I don't think I'm like one of the greats or anything. Mm-hmm. I think I'm decent.
Yeah, I think you're a great comic.
I think I do well in smaller places where I can, I like crowd work. I like interacting. I like writing from stage. There is nothing I can think of that seems more vomit-inducing than being like a stadium comic.
Right.
No, thank you.
I don't think that is something that I see in my future, so I don't know. But I mean, I'm trying to think what the biggest show I've ever done was. It was probably Otakon? Maybe? Mag's pretty big as well. I think that was somewhere between 400 and 600 people. So yeah, that's probably the biggest. That's like theater. That's kind of the growth of comic is bar, club, theater, stadium. There's not a lot of stadium comics because it's hard to sell out a stadium when you're just a person with a microphone. But yeah, I would say I would have a couple theater level shows, and they're fun. If there are 700 people that are really interested in coming to see us, we'll get a theater together. But you have to be 700 people. Reach out. I'm at +2 Comedy on Twitter, on X, and you can get some information from us, and we'll perform at your theater. But be 700 people.
Sure.
Anything else you want to add? We're about at an hour.
No, I feel bad. I feel like I didn't have as much as I wish I did to talk about on this. I'm a poor stand-up comedian because I still write like an improviser. Mm-hmm. But I like doing improv. It's a skill I feel like is very underrated as a marketable skill. I know at some point on what is now X, I threatened to run an improv workshop for wrestlers.
Still think it's a great idea.
Because Big Game Leroy said something about wrestlers not being able to act, and I was like, I'll teach people stuff. Mm-hmm. And eventually, I will end up with my bluff being called. I know at one point I was a camp counselor, and it was at a DexCon.
Yeah.
You had to run Strip Twister.
Oh, yes. The mysterious Strip Twister panel, which happens behind closed doors that you're not supposed to talk about. It's like a secret panel that they happen to call Strip Twister that could be anything.
So you couldn't run it one year.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll handle it. And then I just ran an improv workshop, which is so improv-y it hurts. Yeah. I had an hour and no plan. So I ran an improv workshop.
Yeah. I think the reason you are so good at stand-up from an improv perspective is, and this is me being a technician, I always say that improv and stand-up are related but opposite muscles, because stand-up is set up, punch, set up, punch, set up, punch. And improv is always set up, punch, and then, and then, and then. And it's always about looking for more and following more and finding more and finding more. But you were always the straight man.
Yes.
So your job in improv was bunch of madness happens. Boom! Punchline. And that allowed your partners to then bring up new madness. So you could then, bang, another punchline. So you're kind of like, your role in improv is very much the straight man who is more concise and more stand-up kind of structurally.
I could see that, yeah.
So you didn't ask for that, but there is me being a technician and over-evaluating stand-up comedy.
Have you just considered being funny?
No, never. I'm not very funny. I'm just very good at following the rules and pushing the buttons that, when combined, make a joke happen.
Oh, nobody is funnier than I follow the rules. Mm-hmm. Well,
goodbye. Thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying Tune Out, please consider becoming a patron. That's patreon.com/plus2comedy. And you can give suggestions on what we're going to do until the actors and the writers come back and we can go back to watching TV. Yay! We have some great plans for that in the future. So
we do. I want to do those.
Hopefully we'll be able to do those very, very soon. Where can people find us?
You can email us at thestaydoomedshow@gmail.com or on Facebook and whatever you want to call it at Stay Doomed.
And if you want to talk to me personally because you are 700 people and you would like to see me do comedy, I'm at +2comedy on X.
If you've ever considered just, being funny, I'm at Priorities on X and Glitter and Glow Tape everywhere else. Until next time, tune out!
Tune out!